The storm had been chasing him all day, and the storm was winning. It wasn't rain, not water, not snow, not anything comforting like that. It was grit, powdered rock, a dry red haze that scraped his mask and tried to squeeze through its filters, and if he stopped for even a few minutes the dust would have buried him up to the knees just out of spite. He told himself he'd seen worse, but that was a lie. His worst storms had at least had the decency to come with thunder, lightning, or some sense of drama. This storm was petty, the kind that whispered insults instead of shouting threats. He imagined it saying things like, "You should have stayed home, human," or "nice boots. Shame if they got eaten by sand." His oxygen gauge blinked a warning, which was how he knew he had to find cover. He squinted against the grit, trying to make out shapes in the murk. Most of the horizon looked like smeared paint, but then, through the blur, something tall and domed appeared. He thought it was a hallucination at first, the kind you got when your mask was clogged and your brain wasn't getting enough clean air. Still, he headed for it, because even a hallucination was better than suffocating while being insulted by dirt. As he trudged closer, the dome resolved into a half-collapsed shelter. Its surface shimmered weakly, some kind of energy field flickering in and out like a failing neon sign. A door frame leaned crooked in the storm. The human was just about to decide the place looked about as welcoming as a broken jaw when a voice rang out, clear and sharp over the storm. "Please come inside, human." He froze. The words had weight, urgency, and he couldn't help noticing, oddly theatrical timing, as though whoever spoke had practiced them in a mirror. "Don't just stand there." The voice called again, higher now, nearly breaking with insistence. "Do you want to be peeled alive by sandflakes? Get in." Sandflakes. He considered asking what those were but decided against it. His oxygen gauge beeped louder. He stumbled toward the doorway, ready to duck inside, but his instincts reminded him of a few universal rules. Free food in abandoned spaceports is always poisoned. Mysterious doors usually lead to teeth, and anyone yelling from the shadows probably wants something from you. Still, the storm was trying to make a coffin out of him, so he pushed forward. The figure appeared in the doorway just as he reached it. At first glance she looked human, a slim woman framed in dim light. Then the details clicked, her ears, long and tapering upward, twitching as though scanning the storm like instruments. "Inside," she ordered again, grabbing his sleeve. "Unless you enjoy being exfoliated to death. Which if you do, no judgment, but maybe do it later." The human stumbled in after her, coughing as the storm sealed itself back outside with a slam of the crooked door. The air inside was cleaner, but not by much. He adjusted his mask, looking around the chamber. The place was a mess. Consoles half-lit, wires dangling like forgotten vines, strange machines muttering to themselves in static. Something that looked suspiciously like a coffee pot sat in the middle of a glowing diagram, sputtering steam. The woman slapped the doorframe and declared, "See, safe. Well, safer, mostly, probably. Don't touch the red wires." He turned to her, still catching his breath. "And who exactly are you?" "Your savior, you're welcome." She tilted her head, ears flicking, watching him like he was both fascinating and ridiculous. "I'm the one keeping this place from collapsing into sad rubble. And now apparently, I'm the one keeping you from becoming sad rubble." He blinked at her, too tired to argue. "I didn't ask for saving." "Humans never do," she replied, rolling her eyes. "Always stumbling around like you're allergic to survival. Honestly, it's amazing your species hasn't tripped into a black hole yet." He couldn't help a dry laugh. "Give it time." She brightened instantly, a grin spreading across her face. "Oh, you make jokes. Good, that'll help. The walls like jokes, keeps them from groaning too much." Right on cue, the shelter groaned, a long, low moan that echoed down the corridor. She wagged a finger at the ceiling. "See, jealous already, don't mind it, it gets clingy when strangers arrive." The human sat heavily on what he assumed was a chair. It wriggled under him like it was trying to decide if it liked being sat on. He almost jumped up, but she patted the chair. "Stay, it just wants to know you first. Don't ask me how it decides. Sometimes it likes people with smelly socks, sometimes it prefers people who hum. You'll be fine. He eyed her suspiciously. You live here. Live babysit, keep the lights from eating each other. Yes, this shelter is mine, or maybe I'm its, hard to say these days. For a moment, silence. Then she added casually, you should eat something before you pass out. Humans are fragile like biscuits. You snap easy. He shook his head. I'll pass. She gasped dramatically. Pass on food after a storm like that. Do you have any idea how rude that is? My grandmother would strike you down with a frying pan. He chuckled again despite himself. I'd like to see her try. She would, the alien said seriously, ears twitching with indignation. She once beat a sand beast with a ladle. I'll cook. You'll eat. End of discussion. He leaned back into the living chair, staring at the ceiling. It groaned again, like it resented his weight. The alien woman bustled around, muttering about ingredients, most of which sounded more like insults than food. Root bark of sour face, fungus of shame, powdered almost meat. He wondered what kind of cosmic luck had led him here, to this strange shelter, this stranger woman with ears that listened to storms and a tongue that never stopped talking. He should have been terrified. But exhaustion, hunger, and the ridiculousness of it all left him oddly calm. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he didn't feel like the universe was trying to kill him. Well, maybe it was still trying, but now at least it was entertaining about it. And as the alien woman set a steaming bowl of something suspicious in front of him and declared with absolute confidence, "Eat this, or I'll tell the storm you're single," he realized he was already too far gone to turn back. He noticed first the smell, something sharp and sweet, like a bakery had been electrocuted. The shelter's walls hummed faintly, as though every panel had swallowed a song and was trying to hum it back out in fragments. The alien woman, standing with her ears twitching like antennae that couldn't quite decide on a frequency, carried a tray of bowls. Each one steamed with food that looked deceptively normal until you realized it pulsed, like it had a heartbeat of its own. She set them down proudly, her eyes shining with the confidence of someone who had no idea what inedible might mean to a human stomach. "Eat," she commanded, though the tone was more playful than threatening. "It's my specialty. My grandmother taught me the recipe. She said it once kept 3 of my cousins alive during a winter when the snow tried to argue with the sun, and won." He peered into the bowl. The contents glowed faintly purple, strands of something that resembled noodles but twitched when he poked them with the spoon. "These are moving," he said cautiously. "They're not moving," she corrected with mock indignation. "They're adjusting. They adjust to whoever eats them. They'll stop when they figure you out." "That's not reassuring." She grinned, her ears flicking forward, betraying amusement. "Just don't make any sudden movements. They don't like surprises." He took a tentative bite. The taste slammed into his tongue with the force of a confused orchestra: cinnamon, battery acid, peppermint, and something that might have been burnt toast, all fighting for dominance. He tried to swallow with dignity but instead coughed so hard he nearly knocked the bowl over. The alien woman clapped her hands together, delighted. "Success! That's exactly how my cousins reacted, which means it's working." He stared at her, horrified but unable to keep from laughing at the same time. "If that's working, I don't want to know what failure tastes like." "Oh, failure tastes like mushrooms," she said seriously. "Do you humans eat those? Terrible little things. They pretend to be plants but aren't, sneaky." The shelter itself seemed to agree, for the walls gave a little hiccup-like vibration, and a light flickered in one corner as if chuckling. The man realized that everything in this place had a personality. Whether accidental or intentional, he couldn't yet tell. A door on the far side suddenly tried to open, but instead of sliding, it argued with itself in a series of squeaks, then closed again. The alien sighed. "That's the 3rd time tonight. The door thinks it's retired. It wants a pension. I told it we don't have pensions here, but it's stubborn." He leaned back, shaking his head. "You're telling me you're stuck on this planet with malfunctioning doors and noodles? that try to crawl into your esophagus. Exactly, which is why I begged you to come inside. Do you know how rare it is for me to see? The storm had been chasing him all day, and the storm was winning. It wasn't rain, not water, not snow, not anything comforting like that. It was grit, powdered rock, a dry red haze that scraped his mask and tried to squeeze through its filters, and if he stopped for even a few minutes the dust would have buried him up to the knees just out of spite. He told himself he'd seen worse, but that was a lie. His worst storms had at least had the decency to come with thunder, lightning, or some sense of drama. This storm was petty, the kind that whispered insults instead of shouting threats. He imagined it saying things like, "You should have stayed home, human, or nice boots. Shame if they got eaten by sand." His oxygen gauge blinked a warning, which was how he knew he had to find cover. He squinted against the grit, trying to make out shapes in the murk. Most of the horizon looked like smeared paint. But then, through the blur, something tall and domed appeared. He thought it was a hallucination at first, the kind you got when your mask was clogged and your brain wasn't getting enough clean air. Still, he headed for it, because even a hallucination was better than... The alien woman stood, brushing crumbs off her tunic, and beckoned him toward a corridor. "Come on, I'll show you the fun parts. You've only seen the polite rooms. The shelter has moods, you know, and bad habits. Like a roommate who eats your leftovers without asking." He followed, cautious but curious. The corridor stretched longer than seemed possible, bending slightly as if it had forgotten what straight lines were. Doors dotted the walls, each one marked by glowing symbols that rearranged themselves like sentences still deciding what to say. She stopped at one, slapped her palm against the panel, and muttered, "Don't be dramatic." The door hummed, then slid open reluctantly. Inside, a room bloomed with holographic constellations, starfields drifting lazily as though they'd been poured into the air like paint. Cats padded across them, dozens of them, luminous outlines of feline shapes chasing each other through galaxies. He blinked. "Are those cats?" "Yes." She folded her arms, proud. "This is supposed to be a navigation map. But for some reason, it insists on putting cats into every star system. Look, there's Orion, except instead of a belt, it's got a kitten batting at a ball of plasma." He squinted. She was right. The map had recast the hunter as a clumsy kitten swiping its paw at imaginary prey. "I tried to fix it," she went on. "But every time I delete the cats, they come back twice as smug. I think it's become self-aware, and I respect that. So I let it keep them. Besides, it makes the universe look less lonely." He stepped further in, reaching out toward a glowing feline outline that flickered and meowed faintly. His fingers passed through cold light. He couldn't resist a small smile. "I never thought I'd find comfort in cosmic cats." "That's because you don't understand their true purpose," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "They're spies. Everywhere you go in the galaxy, cats are watching, silent, patient, waiting for something." He chuckled. "You're serious." "Serious enough that I sleep with one eye open. Or I would, if I trusted the doors to stay closed." The ceiling above them groaned, punctuating her words with an ominous creak. She rolled her eyes. "See, even the ceiling is listening, probably jealous again." They left the constellation room, the holographic cats scattering back into star-shaped clusters. Down another corridor they encountered a small drone whirring about. It zipped toward him and latched onto his boots, furiously polishing with tiny brushes. "Oh no," she groaned. "Not again." "What's it doing?" "It's addicted to shoes," she explained matter-of-factly. "Ever since it found out you can buff them to a shine, it hasn't stopped. Once it tried to polish my ears. That was awkward." He looked down at the determined little machine scrubbing at his boots like its life depended on it. "Should I stop it?" "You can't. It doesn't respond to commands anymore. The only way to make it leave is to tell it a bedtime story. It likes ones with happy endings." He laughed, unsure if she was joking. She wasn't laughing, though her eyes glittered with mischief. With a sigh, he crouched. "Fine. Once upon a time, there was a little polishing drone who wanted to shine the entire galaxy. so it scrubbed stars until they sparkled. The drone beeped happily, released his boots, and zipped off. She clapped. "See, you're a natural, it likes you. Careful though, next time it might ask for sequels." The storm outside rumbled faintly, but here inside the bizarre labyrinth of her shelter, time bent and softened. He felt less like a stranger trapped by circumstance and more like a character in one of her sitcom transmissions, half absurd, half sincere, carried forward by laughter and strange companionship. At one point, as they passed a broken panel, her ears twitched sharply. She froze, listening. He noticed how her whole body went still, humor slipping for a moment. "What is it?" he whispered. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "The stars are whispering tonight. My ears catch it sometimes, like radio static but older. I can't tell if it's warning me or just laughing at me." The silence stretched too long, heavy enough to unsettle him. Then she grinned suddenly and poked his arm. Or maybe it's the cat's, hard to say. Relief burst out of him in laughter. "You're impossible." "Yes," she said cheerfully, "and you're still here, which makes you worse." They walked on together, and for the first time he wondered if the storm outside might never end, and if that was such a terrible thing after all. Morning crept into the shelter the way a shy guest arrives at a party, hesitant, carrying gifts it wasn't sure anyone wanted. The walls, which had been moaning and sulking through the night, now thrummed softly with a steadier rhythm, as if the storm's fury outside had finally tired itself out. He woke to the smell of something burning, not quite food, not quite plastic, but certainly intentional. The alien woman crouched over a device that hissed sparks, stirring it with a spoon as though that would help. "Breakfast," she announced proudly, without looking up. Her ears twitched toward him anyway, like she had eyes in the tips. "Don't worry, it only explodes if you ask it politely." He sat up, rubbing the exhaustion from his eyes, and managed a smile. "And if I don't ask it politely?" "Then it sulks," she said with a shrug. "Everything in here has feelings, including the toaster, which, by the way, you should never compliment. It gets ideas." The contraption on the counter gave a spiteful hiss, as if proving her point. He laughed, though beneath it lingered the awareness that dawn meant choices, and choices meant endings. They ate together, if one could call prodding sizzling blue cubes and sipping bubbling liquid eating. He tried not to make a face, and she pretended not to notice. Instead, she filled the silence with her usual chatter, stories about cousins he wasn't sure existed, tales of cosmic parades where suns danced in rhythm, and the confession that she once told a vending machine she loved it because she needed an extra snack. Her humor kept the morning alive, but the truth sat between them, unspoken. He wasn't stranded here forever. The storm had passed. His path could continue. After the meal, she pulled him toward the broken heart of the shelter, the central chamber where wires hung like vines, flickering consoles muttered to themselves, and the floor tilted just enough to make walking feel like an argument with gravity. "This," she announced, throwing her arms wide, "is the part of the house I don't let guests see, which makes you special, or foolish." "Both," he said, stepping carefully over a tangle of cables. She laughed, a bright sound that cut through the gloom. "You're learning. Good. This place, it's more than broken machinery. It's memory. My people built it as a resting post for travelers, a place where no one felt alone in the vast stretch of nothing." But then, she trailed off, her smile flickering. "Then the travelers stopped coming." He waited, letting her find her words. "I kept fixing it," she said softly, ears drooping, "talking to it, laughing at it, pretending it was still what it was meant to be. But you can't fill silence with jokes forever. Sometimes you need another voice." He swallowed, the weight of her confession pressing gently but firmly against him. "And now you have one." She looked at him then, and for once there wasn't mischief or teasing in her expression. Just something raw, like a wound that had finally decided to breathe. Before the silence could grow too heavy, the shelter itself interrupted with a groan. A panel lit up, sputtered, and projected a shaky image into the air. Their storm-beaten planet fading into a starfield, paths of light weaving outwards like veins. Her ears perked, alert. It wants to leave, she whispered. Or maybe it wants us to. He studied the map. One of the routes pulsed brighter than the rest, beckoning. It looked almost like a cat's paw print, and he nearly laughed, remembering the constellations. She stepped closer, excitement sparking through her sadness. If we repair the core, maybe it can fly again. Maybe it can be more than a tomb. And what about you? He asked. She blinked. What about me? If the shelter can leave, do you stay here or go? For once, she didn't have a quick answer. Her ears twitched, betraying her turmoil. I've spent so long waiting